Hey there, Tom here. Today we're going to do a quick walkthrough of a USB update to the Poly Edge E300 that we'll be deploying to a bunch of our infusion centers. Now, these phones are shipping with an unsupported firmware. They're shipping with an 8.0 firmware. And what we're going to do is use a pre-configured USB drive to add the provisioning server for Genesis Cloud, specifically the West region. And we're also going to add our company certificates so that the phone is allowed to download that firmware, which Genesis is going to automatically push once the phone talks to the provisioning server. Now, the phone actually has to be built in Genesis Cloud for it to download the firmware. That's not always going to be the case, but we will at least configure the provisioning server so that the next time the phone is plugged in at its destination infusion center, by then we will have it configured and then it will go through the 10-minute update process. And it'll also take on all of its other settings like the extension and kind of the basic usability functions that are part of that configuration. For the most part, those settings are all going to come from Genesis Cloud. So let's go ahead and get started. I've just booted up a Poly Edge E300. And if we do a 147 on the keypad for 3 seconds, it'll take us to the details screen. And we can see that this thing is right out of the box. It does have the IP address given to it by my home network, but everything else is out of the box. And down here at the very bottom, you can see the firmware version is 8.0.2, which again is unsupported by Genesis. But once we plug in and connect to the provisioning server, as long as we have our company certificates, this phone will take a firmware download from Genesis. Now, if we don't have the certificates, our network will not allow the Genesis firmware download to happen. So it's very important that we get the certificates on the phone, at least for that initial setup, so that it can grab that latest firmware. One thing to note is once it grabs the new firmware and installs it, it erases those certificates. So this is like a one and done deal. But it will be enough to at least get us on the network, get us talking to Genesis Cloud, and get us to a supported firmware. Because right now, 8.0.2 is not supported. So if you happen to have issues with the phone configuration, Genesis is not going to answer your questions until you get it on a minimum supported version. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's exit this screen. So we're going to press next on this language option. And here is kind of your user agreement. You just have to hit accept on that. Now it's going to say set admin password. So we're going to type in just a very simple one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then hit the down arrow, 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And then we're going to hit enter. Okay, once we've entered the new password, we can go ahead and insert our USB drive. So let me go ahead and find that. And we're going to insert that USB drive. Okay, so watch what happens on the screen once once the USB drive gets entered, plugged in. So we're not even going to choose a time zone. So now it's saying USB provisioning, enter the password, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we hit enter, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to do USB provisioning? So we'll hit the yes button. Now it's going to take a few seconds. It's initiating a reboot. This is actually a very fast process. So what I've learned is while it's got a USB drive plugged in, it's pretty much going to use the settings off of that USB. Okay, so some things have happened here. Once this screen clears, so it's contacting provisioning server. I'm guessing that's Genesis. Can't really tell. It doesn't tell you much. So let's do a 147. See what's going on with the settings. Okay, we've still got the IP address, but now we can see that the provisioning server has changed. So it's now using Genesis's usw2.pure.cloud. The firmware is still 8.0.2, so that's kind of expected. It's not going to update the firmware until Genesis downloads all of the kind of the configuration. But let's go ahead and at this point now we're going to unplug the USB drive. So here we go. So now it says storage media removed. And now I can see something happening here in the corner. That always tells me that there's some kind of update happening to the phone. When you see that little kind of circle chasing its tail. It's 6 a.m. on a Sunday, so I'm still having my coffee. By the way, I'm filming this in my technically unsound podcast studio. It's typically where I do like product reviews and gear tutorials. So I figured, I got the setup for it. Why not do a work tutorial? It's kind of gear. Okay, I'm going to just wake that. You know what? I don't know if I'm going to do anything. Maybe I'll try to wake the screen up. Okay. Go back to the home screen. So I do still see that the little circle, it's kind of like this phone's version of an hourglass, right? Telling you it's doing some work behind the scenes. If you're wondering, I'm drinking Dunkin' Donuts medium roast. Okay, it's doing a reboot, it looks like. I heard it make its little beeping indicator, and there it goes. Can see the buttons lit up on the phone, and it's clearly on the boot up screen. So we're about 9 minutes in right now. I'm pretty sure this all happens in less than 10 minutes. So we've got about a minute to go to meet that criteria. Oh, I can already see now that Genesis Cloud has updated the phone extension. This is a Poly Lens data collection. I'm just going to hit dismiss on this. Okay, initializing network. Contacting provisioning server. And my extension has turned into a green check, which means it is fully functional. Okay, it looks like it's doing one more reboot. Boy, we're going to be cutting it close on that 10 minutes. I can see we're at 9 minutes and 20 seconds. So if it's taking about 10 minutes a phone and you have 450 phones, someone do that math. They're going to be busy. Looking good so far. Again, you know what? Let's hit yes so it stops asking on that Poly Lens data collection. Poly Lens is the HP kind of polyphone department. Okay, we're at 10 minutes and 15 seconds, and I think we're done at this point. So let's do a 147. Okay, so I can see we've got all of our details here. And now look at the version, 8.4.1. So we are on the latest Genesis supported version because Genesis is who deployed this firmware to us. And at this point, this phone is ready to be boxed up and shipped out to its infusion center. Just like that, took about 10 minutes. So on to the next one. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And if there's anything you need to rewatch, obviously you can pause and rewind on this video. But thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.